Hello, dear ones. Settle in close because what I'm about to share with you will shake your faith in family and restore your faith in the universe. My sister stole $3 million from me. She looked me in the eyes at our mother's funeral and smiled while signing papers that stripped me of everything my parents built. But here's what she didn't know. The universe was watching, and karma doesn't forget. This is a story about betrayal so calculated, so cruel, that it nearly destroyed me. But it's also a story about something far more powerful, the cosmic scales of justice that tip in ways we can't always see coming. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever wondered whether wrongdoing truly catches up with people, if you've ever needed to believe that the universe has a plan, then this story is for you. Because what happened to my sister, what the universe orchestrated over the next 3 years, was so perfectly poetic, so impossibly precise, that even I, in all my anger and pain, could barely believe it was real. By the end of this story, you'll witness how every single thing she stole came back to haunt her, how every lie she told became a trap, how very greed that drove her to betray me became the instrument of her complete undoing. Some call it karma, some call it cosmic justice, some call it God's plan. I call it the day I learned that the universe keeps perfect accounts. So pull up close, dear ones. Let Auntie Whispers tell you about the sister who wanted everything and lost everything. About betrayal, about greed, and about the magnificent, terrifying precision of karmic justice. This is the story of how my sister destroyed herself while the universe and I simply watched. My name is Catherine, though my family always called me Cat. And if you ask me at any point in the first 34 years of my life who I trusted most in this world, I would have said my sister without hesitation. Rachel was my best friend. 2 years older than me, she'd been my protector growing up, my confidant, my partner in every childhood adventure and teenage rebellion. We were the Morrison sisters. Irish twins, our mother used to joke, though we were actually 23 months apart. We grew up in Northern California, in a beautiful coastal town where our parents ran a successful marine supply business. Our father, James Morrison, started Morrison Maritime Supply with nothing but a small loan and an encyclopedic knowledge of boats. Our mother, Ellen, managed the books and the customer relationships with a warmth that made everyone feel like family. Can you picture it, dear ones? A childhood that felt almost too perfect to be real? Summer days on the docks, the smell of salt water and diesel fuel, the sound of boat rigging punking against masts in the evening breeze. Rachel and I running wild through the marina, knowing every boat captain by name, eating ice cream on the pier while our parents worked. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. More than that, we were happy. Our parents built something real, something solid, and they always told us the same thing. This business isn't just ours. It's yours, girls, for your future, for your children's future. Do you know what that feels like? To grow up knowing you're part of something bigger than yourself? To understand that every early morning your father dragged himself out of bed, every late night your mother spent reconciling accounts, it was all an act of love, an investment in the family legacy. Rachel and I used to talk about it endlessly, how we'd run the business together someday, how she'd handle the operations side. She was always the organized one, the planner, while I'd focus on expansion and customer relationships. We had it all mapped out. I can still remember the conversation we had on her 25th birthday. We were sitting on the back deck of our parents' house, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold and pink. Rachel turned to me and said, "No matter what happens, Kat, we're in this together, you and me, always." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. Let me paint you a proper picture of Rachel, because you need to understand who she was, or who I thought she was, to grasp the magnitude of what came later. Rachel was beautiful, not in a flashy way, but in that classic, elegant manner that made people trust her instantly. She had our mother's soft brown eyes and our father's easy smile. She dressed conservatively, spoke thoughtfully, and had a way of making everyone in a room feel heard. She married young, at 24, to a man named Derek Chen. Derek was a commercial real estate developer, ambitious and sharp. I liked him well enough, though I always sensed something calculating behind his friendly exterior. But Rachel loved him, or seemed to, and they built what appeared to be a solid life together. They had 2 children, Madison, who was 7 when our story really begins, and Tyler, who was 5. Beautiful kids, smart, polite. Rachel seemed to have it all: the loving marriage, the perfect family, the bright future ahead. I took a different path. I went to college, got a degree in hospitality management, and came back home to work in the family business. But I also pursued my passion. I became a foster parent. At 32, I had 3 foster children living with me: Jasmine, age 9, Marcus, age 7, and little Sophie, who was only 4. Did I have Rachel's picture-perfect life? No. I was single, living in a modest house, driving a 10-year-old car. But I was happy, dear ones. I was building something meaningful. I was there for kids who needed someone to be there. And I had my family. My parents, now in their late 60s, still running the business, but starting to talk about retirement. Rachel, who I spoke to almost daily, her kids who called me Auntie Kat, and spent weekends at my house playing with my foster children. We were solid. We were connected. We were a family. Or so I thought. The first crack in the foundation appeared so subtly that I almost missed it entirely. It was a Thursday afternoon in March. I remember because Madison had a school play that evening, and I was planning to attend. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some paperwork for the business, and I found Rachel there, sitting at the kitchen table with Mom and Dad. They were looking at documents, legal documents from what I could see. "Oh," Rachel looked up, startled. "Kat, I didn't know you were coming by." "Just dropping off the quarterly reports," I said, setting the folder on the counter. "What's going on?" There was a beat of hesitation, just a fraction of a second, but I felt it. Then Mom smiled and said, "Just boring estate planning stuff, honey. You know how your father is about having everything in order." Dad nodded. "Getting old, Kat. Gotta make sure all our ducks are in a row." It seemed reasonable. They were in their late 60s. Of course, they were thinking about estate planning. But something about Rachel's expression, a tightness around her eyes, a forced quality to her smile stayed with me. I pushed it aside. Rachel was probably just stressed about something, Derek's business maybe, or the kids' schedules. We all had our moments. But looking back now, dear ones, I realize that was the moment. The moment when Rachel looked at those papers and made a choice. The moment when something dark and hungry stirred to life inside her. The moment when my sister stopped being my sister and became something else entirely. The next few months passed in what seemed like ordinary life. Spring turned to summer. The business was doing well, actually remarkably well. Dodd had just secured a major contract with a new marina development, and the projected revenue had everyone excited. Rachel and I met for lunch every Tuesday, our standing tradition. We'd go to this little seafood place near the docks, order the same thing we always ordered, clam chowder and sourdough bread, and catch up on our lives. "How's Marcus doing?" Rachel asked one Tuesday in July. "Is he settling in better?" "So much better," I told her, feeling that warm glow I always got when talking about the kids. He's been with me for 6 months now, and he's really starting to trust that this is stable, that I'm not going anywhere. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're doing such important work, Kat. I'm so proud of you." See what I mean, dear ones? This was Rachel. Supportive, loving, present. Or was it all performance? I'll never know when the transformation truly began. When my sister looked at our family's success and decided she wanted more than her share. When she looked at me, single, devoted to foster children, content with enough, and decided I didn't deserve an equal inheritance. But I do know this. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already far too late. In September, Dad had a health scare. He was at the warehouse, moving some heavy equipment, when he felt chest pains. The paramedics were called, and we all rushed to the hospital, hearts in our throats. It turned out to be angina, not a heart attack. Painful and scary, but manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. But it shook all of us. It reminded us that our parents weren't invincible, that time was passing faster than we wanted to admit. "I need to finish updating the estate plan," Dad said that night in his hospital room. "Need to make sure everything's clear. No confusion, no fighting between you girls after we're gone." "Dad, don't talk like that," I said, my voice thick. "You're going to be fine." But Rachel nodded seriously. "He's right, Kat. It's important to have everything documented properly. I've been helping them work through all the details." "You have?" This was news to me. Someone has to. And was there an edge to her voice? A hint of something sharp? "You're so busy with the kids and the day-to-day operations. I've been taking care of the legal and financial planning side." I should have questioned that, dear ones. Should have asked why I wasn't included in these conversations, why major decisions about our family's future were happening without me. But I was tired. I had 3 children at home who needed me. I had a business to help run. And I trusted my sister. God help me. I trusted her completely. October arrived with cooler weather and golden light slanting across the coastal hills. The business was thriving. Dad was recovering well. Life felt stable, if tinged with the awareness that change was coming someday. Rachel invited me over for dinner one evening, just the two of us. Derek was traveling for business, and the kids were at his parents' house. We sat on her back patio, drinking wine and watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Rachel seemed thoughtful, almost melancholy. Do you ever think about the future, Kat? Really think about it? All the time. I think about the kids, about whether I'll be able to adopt any of them permanently, about maybe expanding my fostering to include teenagers, about eventually taking over more of the business operations. And you're happy with that? With the way things are? I looked at her, puzzled by the question. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? She was quiet for a long moment. I just wonder sometimes if you realize how much Mom and Dad have built. The actual value of everything, the business, the properties, the investments, it's substantial, Kat. Really substantial. I know, and I'm grateful. We both are. Are we, though? Are we equally grateful? Will we be equally involved when the time comes? What do you mean? Nothing, she said quickly, too quickly. Just thinking out loud. Ignore me, I'm in a weird mood. But her words stayed with me, dear ones, rattled around in my head as I drove home that night. What had she meant? Why had she sounded almost bitter? I told myself I was reading too much into it. Rachel was probably just stressed. Derek's business had been struggling lately. She'd mentioned something about a deal falling through. Money worries could make anyone say strange things. I decided to let it go, to trust in our bond, our history, our love. That decision, dear ones, would haunt me for years. Because 3 weeks later, my world exploded, and I finally saw my sister's true face. It was a Tuesday morning in early November. I was making breakfast for the kids, pancakes, because Marcus had finally worked up the courage to ask for his favorite food, and I was so proud of him for expressing his needs. My phone rang. Mom's number. "Hey, Mom," I answered, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear while I flipped a pancake. "What's up?" There was a sound on the other end that made my blood run cold. A choking, gasping sound. The sound of someone trying to speak through tears. "Mom? Mom, what's wrong?" "Kat?" Her voice broke. "Kat, you need to come to the hospital. Now. It's your father." The spatula clattered to the floor. I don't remember much about the drive to the hospital. I called my backup foster parent, a woman named Sarah, who I'd trained with, and she rushed over to stay with the kids. I remember running to my car, remember my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the ignition. Dad had had a massive heart attack while opening the business that morning. They'd rushed him to emergency surgery, but by the time I arrived at the hospital, he was already gone. Gone. My father. My rock. The man who taught me about integrity and hard work and loving your children unconditionally. Just gone. I found Mom in a waiting room, collapsed in a chair, her face gray with shock. Rachel was there too, sitting beside her, arm around her shoulders. When Rachel saw me, she stood and hugged me, and I clung to her like a drowning person. "How did this happen?" I kept asking. "How did this happen so fast?" His heart just gave out, Rachel said quietly. "The doctor said it was massive. He probably didn't suffer. He was gone before he hit the ground. We held each other and cried. Two sisters, devastated by loss, finding comfort in each other. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I wonder, was Rachel already planning? Even in that moment of grief? Was she calculating, measuring, preparing her next moves while tears ran down her face? The funeral was 4 days later. A beautiful service at the church where my parents had been married 43 years earlier. The Marina community turned out in force, hundreds of people whose lives Dad had touched over the decades. I spoke at the service, talked about Dad's generosity, his integrity, his unwavering commitment to family. I broke down twice during my eulogy, unable to finish sentences through my tears. Rachel spoke too. She was more composed than me, more controlled. She talked about how Dad had taught her about business, about planning for the future, about the importance of protecting what you build. At the time, I thought it was a beautiful tribute. Now, those words make my skin crawl. After the service, during the reception at our parents' house, the family lawyer appeared. His name was Richard Hastings, and he'd been handling my parents' legal affairs for 20 years. "Girls," he said quietly, pulling Rachel and me aside, "I'm so sorry for your loss. James was a wonderful man." "Thank you, Richard," Rachel said. "I need to schedule a time to read the will. It's just a formality. Your father was very clear about his wishes, but we should do it properly. Would Friday work for both of you?" Friday, 3 days away. "Of course," Rachel said immediately. I nodded numbly. The will felt abstract, unimportant compared to the crushing weight of grief. I just wanted to get through each day, get back to my kids who needed stability and routine, even as my world fell apart. "Friday at 2 p.m. then," Richard said, "at my office." He glanced at Rachel, and something passed between them, something I didn't understand at the time. A look of confirmation, of conspiracy. Friday arrived gray and drizzly. Mom, Rachel, and I gathered in Richard Hastings' office, sitting in leather chairs that creaked when we shifted our weight. The room smelled like old books and furniture polish. Richard sat behind his massive oak desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, a thick folder open in front of him. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to say again how sorry I am for your loss. James was not just a client, but a friend." We murmured our thanks. "Now," Richard continued, "the estate is substantial, and James was very thorough in his planning. He wanted to make sure there was no confusion about his wishes." He began reading the will. Legal language washed over me. Whereas and heretofore and in consideration of. I barely processed it, my mind still foggy with grief. Then Richard said something that made my blood stop moving. The entirety of the business, Morrison Maritime Supply, including all assets, real property, intellectual property, and future revenue, is to be transferred to Rachel Elizabeth Morrison Chen. Wait, what? I leaned forward. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Richard looked uncomfortable. "The business goes to Rachel, in its entirety." That can't be right," I said, my voice shaking. "Dad always said the business was for both of us. He always said—" "I understand this is difficult," Richard interrupted gently. "But these were your father's wishes, as documented in his most recent will, updated and signed just 2 months ago." 2 months ago. when Rachel had been helping with the estate planning. I turned to look at my sister. She was sitting very still, staring straight ahead, her face carefully blank. "Rachel," I said. "Rachel, did you know about this?" "Kat, I..." She finally looked at me, and there was something in her eyes, something I'd never seen before. "Dad and I talked about it. He thought it made sense for one person to have clear control of the business, to avoid conflicts." "Conflicts?" My voice was rising. "We never had conflicts. We always planned to run it together." "You have your foster children," Rachel said, and her tone was so calm, so reasonable. "You're focused on that. Dad wanted the business in the hands of someone who could devote themselves to it full time." "That's not..." I couldn't breathe, couldn't process. "Mom, did you know about this?" Mom looked stricken, tears streaming down her face. Your father said it was for the best. He said you'd understand, that you'd be taken care of." "Taken care of?" I echoed. Richard cleared his throat. "Catherine, you're not left with nothing. According to the will, you'll receive the house where you currently live. Your parents are signing over the deed, and a one-time payment of $250,000 from the estate." $250,000. The business was worth at least $15 million. The property alone, the warehouse, the docks, the equipment, everything our parents had built over 40 years. And I was getting a house I already lived in and $250,000 while Rachel got everything else? "This isn't real," I whispered. "This can't be real." "I know it's a shock," Richard said, and he did look genuinely sympathetic. "But your father was quite clear. He met with me multiple times to ensure everything was exactly as he wanted it." Multiple times. With Rachel there. I looked at my sister again, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the person sitting next to me. "You did this," I said quietly. "You didn't you? You manipulated him. You convinced him somehow." "I didn't manipulate anyone," Rachel snapped, and there it was, the mask slipping, the real Rachel underneath. "I showed him the reality of the situation, that you're not capable of running a major business, that you're too distracted by your foster kid project to focus on what matters." "My foster kid project?" I stood up, the room spinning. "Those are children, Rachel, human beings who need..." "And that's exactly the problem." Rachel stood too, her voice hard now, all pretense dropped. "You care more about other people's kids than building something real, than honoring what our parents created. You think Dad wanted someone running his legacy who can't even commit to having her own children?" The words hit like physical blows. Mom was crying openly now. "Girls, please." "I'm sorry, Kat," Rachel said, and she didn't sound sorry at all. "But this is how it is. This is what Dad wanted." "What Dad wanted?" I was shaking, rage and grief and disbelief tangling into something that felt like drowning. "What you wanted?" Rachel picked up her purse. "I have to go. Derek is expecting me. Richard, please send me the final documents to sign." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back at me. "You'll be fine, Kat. $250,000 is more than generous for someone who was never really committed to the business anyway." And then she left. Just walked out, leaving me standing there, my world in ruins, everything I'd believed about my family revealed as a lie.
I didn't sleep for 3 days after that meeting. I couldn't. My mind raced in endless circles, trying to understand what had happened, trying to piece together when and how my sister had stolen my inheritance. Because that's what it was, dear ones, theft. Maybe not in the legal sense, though we'll get to that, but in every way that mattered. On the fourth day, I called Richard Hastings and asked for a meeting. Just him and me. He looked exhausted when I arrived at his office. Guilty, even. "Kat," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit. I assume you have questions?" "When was the will changed?" I asked bluntly. "The exact date." He pulled out a file. "September 23rd. Your father came in to make the amendments." September 23rd. 2 weeks after his health scare, when he was scared and vulnerable and desperate to get his affairs in order. Was Rachel there when he made the changes? Richard hesitated. She accompanied him? Yes. She'd been helping him organize the documentation? And did my father, I leaned forward, seem like himself that day? Did he seem confused at all, pressured? "Kat, I can't." "Richard," my voice was steel. "You've known me since I was 12 years old. You know my father. Did he seem like he fully understood what he was signing?" Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Your father had just started a new heart medication. It can cause cognitive fog, confusion, but he passed all the legal tests for capacity. He knew what he was doing, technically." Technically. What did Rachel say to him during these meetings? "I can't disclose." "Richard, please." My voice broke. "Please, I need to understand." He sighed, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. "She talked about the business, about how it needed strong, focused leadership, about how you were doing important work with foster care, but that it meant you couldn't give the company your full attention, about how it would be better, cleaner, if there was one clear decision maker rather than splitting ownership. And my father just agreed?" "He was scared, Kat. The health scare rattled him badly. Rachel painted a picture of the business falling apart without clear leadership, of family conflicts destroying what he'd built. She was very persuasive." "She manipulated a frightened old man," I said flatly. Richard didn't argue. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I investigated my own sister. I hired a lawyer, a fierce woman named Patricia Wu, who specialized in estate disputes. I asked her to dig into everything: the timeline, the documentation, the circumstances around the will change. What she found made my blood run cold. "Your sister has been planning this for at least 8 months, Patricia told me in her office 3 weeks after my father's death. She spread documents across her desk. "Look at this. Last February, Rachel established a consulting relationship with your parents' company. She convinced them to put her on the payroll, $8,000 a month, ostensibly to help with strategic planning." I stared at the contracts. My signature was nowhere on them. I'd never been consulted. "Then in June," Patricia continued, "she convinced your father to take out a substantial loan against one of the business properties, $2 million. The money went into an account that she controlled." "What? Why would he?" "She told him it was for expansion, for buying out a competitor. But look at where the money actually went." Patricia showed me bank records. "It went into investments in companies that Derek's firm just happens to have stakes in." My head was spinning. She was embezzling? Not quite. It was all technically legal because your father signed off on everything. But she was systematically positioning herself to control every aspect of the business while siphoning money into investments that benefited her and her husband. Can we fight this? Can we prove she manipulated him? That's the brilliant part, Kat. Everything was done legally. Your father signed every document. There are witnesses. He technically had legal capacity at every meeting. Rachel was very, very careful. So there's nothing we can do? I didn't say that. Patricia pulled out another set of documents. There are some irregularities that might give us leverage, and if we can prove undue influence, that Rachel systematically isolated your father, manipulated his fears, and coerced him into changing the will, we might have a case. Might. Estate litigation is difficult, expensive, and ugly. It would take years, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there's no guarantee of success. Your sister has good lawyers. I've already received letters from them warning us not to contest the will. I sat back in my chair, feeling defeated. What do I do? That's up to you, Patricia said gently. You can fight. It'll be brutal, but there's a chance. Or you can accept the inheritance as it stands and move on with your life. Accept it. Move on. Let my sister steal everything our parents built and get away with it. The old me, the me from 2 months ago, might have done just that. Might have decided that family harmony was worth more than money, that the stress and ugliness of a legal battle wasn't worth it. But that Catherine was gone. The person sitting in Patricia Wu's office was someone new. Someone who had learned that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who destroy you. I want to fight, I said, whatever it takes. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a warrior recognizing another warrior. Then let's go to war. I called Rachel 2 days later and asked her to meet me for coffee. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at our usual Tuesday lunch place, the seafood restaurant near the docks, but there was nothing usual about this meeting. Rachel arrived 15 minutes late, dressed in an expensive suit I'd never seen before. She sat across from me with the air of someone arriving at a business meeting, not reconnecting with her sister. "Kat," she said coolly, "what did you want to talk about?" "I want to understand," I said, keeping my voice level. "I want to understand how you could do this." "Do what? Accept the inheritance our father left me? You manipulated him, Rachel. You isolated him, you played on his fears, and you systematically positioned yourself to steal everything while cutting me out." "That's a serious accusation." Her voice was ice. "Do you have any proof?" "I have lawyers looking into it." "Good luck with that." She took a sip of her water. "Everything was legal. Everything was properly documented. Dad made his choice." "Because you manipulated him." "I showed him reality," Rachel snapped, some heat finally entering her voice. "The reality that you were never serious about the business, that you care more about playing house with damaged kids than building on what our parents created. Those children are not your children, Kat." Rachel slammed her hand on the table, making nearby diners turn to look. "They're charity cases you've convinced yourself to care about because you're too scared to build a real life." The words hung in the air between us, toxic and cruel. "Is that really what you think?" I asked quietly. "It's what I know." Rachel's voice was cold again. You know what Dad said to me near the end. He said he was worried about you, worried that you'd never have a real family, never build anything permanent. He wanted to make sure the business went to someone who would value it, protect it, grow it. And you convinced him that person was you. I didn't have to convince him.
He could see it himself. You're lying. I leaned forward. I've seen the timeline, Rachel. I know you've been planning this for months. The consulting fees, the loan, the systematic isolation of Dad from me during all the estate planning, you orchestrated all of it. For just a moment, something flickered in Rachel's eyes. Uncertainty? Fear? Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, hard mask. Believe what you want, she said, standing up. But here's the truth. I have the business. It's mine, legally and completely. You can waste years and hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting it in court if you want, but you'll lose, and you'll destroy what's left of this family in the process. You already destroyed this family, I said. Rachel picked up her purse. No, Kat, I saved the business from being torn apart by your incompetence. You should be thanking me. She walked away, and I sat there, watching my sister, my best friend, my protector, my partner in all things, disappear into the crowd of strangers on the street. That was the moment, dear ones, when I truly understood what I was dealing with. Rachel wasn't just greedy. She wasn't just selfish. She was a sociopath. And she had won. Or so she thought. Because Rachel, in her arrogance and her cruelty, had made one critical mistake. She underestimated karma. The universe moves in mysterious ways, dear ones. Sometimes karma strikes like lightning, instant and obvious. But sometimes it moves like water. Slow, patient, inevitable. Finding every crack, every weakness, every point of vulnerability. And then, when the moment is right, it floods in and washes everything away. For Rachel, the first crack appeared exactly 3 months after she stole my inheritance. It was February, bitter cold and gray. I was in my kitchen making dinner when my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Is this Catherine Morrison? A woman's voice, professional but tense. Yes, who's calling? My name is Jennifer Park. I'm a senior loan officer at Coastal Federal Bank. I'm calling about Morrison Maritime Supply. My stomach dropped. What about it? Are you an owner or officer of the company? No, my sister Rachel Chin is the owner. I see. A pause. I'm calling because the company is currently 60 days past due on a significant loan payment, $87,000. We've been trying to reach Ms. Chin for 2 weeks, but she hasn't responded to our calls or emails. 60 days past due, $87,000? I'm sorry, but I'm not involved with the business anymore. You'll need to contact Rachel directly. We've tried.
Her phone goes to voicemail. Her office manager says she's unavailable. We are reaching out to any family members on file because this is becoming a serious situation. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. Rachel was missing loan payments on a business that had never missed a payment in 40 years. What was happening? I found out 2 weeks later, and not from Rachel. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Tom Bradley, one of the marina captains who'd been a client of Morrison Maritime for 20 years. His face lit up when he saw me, then quickly fell. "Kat, how are you holding up?" "I'm managing, Tom. How are you?" "Well," he looked uncomfortable. "I'm okay, but I gotta tell you, I'm worried about the business, about what's happening over there." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "I placed an order 6 weeks ago. Standard stuff, rope, cleats, some engine parts. Usually it takes a week, maybe 2, but it's been 6 weeks and nothing. I call the office and they keep telling me it's delayed, that there are supply chain issues." "Supply chain issues?" "That's what they say. But Kat, I've been in this business for 30 years. I know when someone's giving me the runaround. And I've talked to other captains. They're all experiencing the same thing. Orders delayed, prices suddenly higher than quoted, quality control problems." My mind was racing. "Has anyone talked to Rachel about this?" "Some have tried. She's never available, never returns calls. The office staff seems stressed out and confused. It's like—" He hesitated. "It's like there's no leadership over there anymore."
After Tom walked away, I stood in the middle of the grocery store, frozen. Rachel was destroying the business. In just 3 months, she was running our parents' 40-year legacy into the ground. I did something that night that I'm not proud of, dear ones. But desperate times call for desperate measures. I drove to Morrison Maritime Supply at 10 p.m. when I knew the building would be empty. I still had my key. Rachel hadn't thought to take it back or change the locks yet. I let myself in. The office was a disaster. Papers everywhere, unfiled invoices stacked on desks, a coffee cup with mold growing in it sitting next to a computer. This was not how our parents had run things, not even close. I went to the main office computer, the one that tracked inventory and accounts. I knew the password because Dad had never changed it from the original Ellen James 1979, their wedding year. It still worked. Rachel hadn't changed it. What I found in the system made me feel physically sick. The inventory was catastrophically low. Items that should have been in stock, basic supplies that any marina supply business would have, were listed as backordered or out of stock. The accounts payable were a nightmare. Dozens of vendor bills unpaid, some over 90 days past due. Red notices, final warnings. And the accounts receivable, money customers owed the business, were sky high. People weren't paying because Rachel wasn't delivering on orders. But here's what really made my blood run cold. I pulled up the bank records. The business account that should have had healthy reserves, Dad always maintained at least $500,000 in operating capital, had $47,000 in it.
$47,000. In 3 months, Rachel had somehow drained the business of over $450,000. Where had it gone? I dug deeper, pulling up transaction histories, wire transfers, check registers. And there it was. Dozens of transfers. Money flowing out of Morrison Maritime Supply and into Derek's real estate company. Rachel had been using the business as her personal piggy bank, funneling money to shore up Derek's failing investments. She wasn't just a thief, she was actively destroying our parents' legacy to save her husband's business. I sat there in the dark office, illuminated only by the computer screen, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Not just anger, not just betrayal. Cold, absolute clarity. Rachel had made her choice. She'd chosen greed over family, chosen theft for integrity, chosen destruction over preservation. And now she was going to face the consequences. Not for me. I couldn't fight her. Not legally, not financially. She'd made sure of that. But karma? Karma was just getting started. March arrived with the first signs of spring and the first signs of Rachel's unraveling. I heard through the marina grapevine, and in a close-knit community like ours, word travels fast, that Morrison Maritime had lost its largest contract. The marina development project that Dad had been so excited about, worth over $2 million, had gone to a competitor. Why? Because Rachel had missed 3 consecutive deadlines for supplying materials. The developer had given her chance after chance, had called, emailed, even showed up at the office. But Rachel was never available, never responsive. And eventually the developer had no choice but to go elsewhere. $2 million in revenue. Gone. Then in April, I got another call, this time from Maria Santos, who had been Morrison Maritime's office manager for 15 years. "Kat," she said, her voice thick with tears, "I don't know what to do. Rachel fired me this morning." "She what?" She came in screaming how I was incompetent, how I was letting the business fall apart. She blamed me for all the problems, the late orders, the angry customers, everything. And then she fired me on the spot. "Maria, I'm so sorry." "The thing is, Kat," Maria's voice dropped to a whisper, "I've been trying to hold things together. I've been working 12-hour days trying to manage the chaos. But Rachel is never there. She doesn't answer calls. She doesn't make decisions. She just takes money out of the accounts and disappears. How am I supposed to run a business with no support, no leadership?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Your parents would be heartbroken," Maria said. "This place was their dream, and Rachel is destroying it." After we hung up, I sat in my car. I'd pulled over to take the call, and I felt something strange. Not satisfaction, exactly, not joy at Rachel's failures, but a sense of rightness, of cosmic balance beginning to assert itself. Rachel had taken something that didn't belong to her, had destroyed family bonds for greed, had manipulated a dying man to feed her own ambition. And now the universe was taking it all back. Slowly, methodically, completely.
May brought warmer weather and Rachel's complete collapse. I was at home when Patricia Wu called, my lawyer who I'd kept on retainer even though we'd put the estate litigation on hold. "Kat," she said, her voice vibrant with excitement, "you need to hear this.
Rachel just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for Morrison Maritime Supply. My breath caught. What? The business is insolvent. She's declaring bankruptcy. And here's the really interesting part. Derek's real estate company filed for bankruptcy on the same day. Both companies? Both companies. It looks like they were propping up Derek's failing investments with money from your father's business. When Morrison Maritime started going under, it pulled Derek's company down with it. They're both circling the drain. I should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad for what could have been. Sad for the legacy my parents had built, now destroyed. There's more, Patricia continued. The bankruptcy filing is going to open up all their financial records to scrutiny. And Kat, there are some very questionable transactions in there. Money moved in ways that might not have been entirely legal. What are you saying? I'm saying that the bankruptcy trustee is going to be very interested in where all that money went. And if they find evidence of fraud, of Rachel deliberately looting the business or misrepresenting the company's finances, there could be criminal charges. Criminal charges against my sister. Additionally, Patricia went on, with the business in bankruptcy, there's going to be a reassessment of the estate. The court might determine that the inheritance was fraudulently obtained or that Rachel's mismanagement constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. You might actually have grounds to reclaim part of the estate. Really? I can't promise anything. But yes, really. Rachel's greed might just have handed you back your inheritance. After the call ended, I walked outside and stood in my garden, feeling the warm May sunshine on my face. The universe, dear ones, the universe was working. June arrived, and with it, the complete destruction of Rachel's life. The bankruptcy proceedings revealed everything. Every questionable transaction, every dollar stolen from Morrison Maritime Supply to prop up Derek's failing investments, every lie Rachel had told to vendors, customers, and employees. The local newspaper covered it extensively. Local business scion declares bankruptcy after mismanagement allegations. The article detailed how a 40-year-old rock-solid business had been destroyed in less than 6 months through incompetence and possible fraud. Rachel's reputation, the carefully cultivated image of the successful businesswoman, the devoted family person, was in ruins. But karma wasn't done, not even close. In July, I heard through mutual friends that Derek had moved out. The marriage, already strained by financial stress, had shattered completely. Rachel came home one day to find half the furniture gone and divorce papers on the kitchen table. Derek, it turned out, blamed Rachel for the business failures, blamed her for dragging his company down with hers, blamed her for the bankruptcy, the debt, the ruin of everything they'd built together. He wanted out, wanted a divorce, wanted to protect whatever assets he had left from Rachel's legal troubles. The man she destroyed our family for was abandoning her. In August, the criminal investigation began. The bankruptcy trustee had found evidence of fraud, systematic theft from Morrison Maritime Supply. Money that should have gone to vendors and operating expenses had been funneled into personal accounts.
The district attorney's office was considering charges, embezzlement, fraud, potentially years in prison. And through it all, dear ones, I watched. I didn't cause any of this. I didn't have to. Rachel had planted every seed of her own destruction. She'd built a house on sand, on lies and greed and cruelty. And when the storms came, as storms always do, it all washed away. In September, 1 year after Dad's death, I saw Rachel for the first time in months. I was at the grocery store, the same one where I'd run into Tom Bradley all those months ago. I was comparing prices on pasta sauce when I heard a voice behind me. Kat? I turned. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Rachel had aged 10 years in 12 months. Her hair was streaked with gray, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore no makeup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She'd lost weight, too much weight, and her clothes hung on her frame. She looked broken. Rachel, I said carefully. She swallowed hard. I need to talk to you. We went to the parking lot and stood beside her car, a 10-year-old Honda that I didn't recognize. What had happened to the BMW she used to drive? Where's your car? Repossessed, she said, her voice flat. Everything is gone. The house, the cars. Derek cleaned out our accounts before he left. The bankruptcy took everything else. I'm living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town. I waited. I didn't know what to say. I'm going to prison, Rachel continued, her voice breaking. The DA is charging me with 6 counts of fraud and embezzlement. My lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 7 years minimum. Still, I said nothing. I lost my kids. Tears were streaming down her face now. Derek got full custody, said I was an unfit mother, that I'd put them at risk with my criminal behavior. I get supervised visitation twice a month. That's it. 2 visits a month with Madison and Tyler, the children she'd once doted on. Everything is gone, Rachel whispered. Everything I did, everything I took, it's all gone. And I'm left with nothing but debt and criminal charges and the knowledge that I destroyed everything. She looked at me then, really looked at me. You were right, she said, about all of it. You manipulated Dad, you stole from me, you destroyed the business. I was so sure I was smarter than everyone else, so sure I could have it all. Why? I asked quietly. Why did you do it? Because I was jealous. The words came out in a rush. Jealous of how happy you were with so little, how content. You didn't need the perfect house or the perfect family or the perfect image. You just were. And I hated you for it. Hated that you could be satisfied when I never was. I wanted more than my share, more than I deserved. And I was willing to do anything to get it, even destroy my own sister. We stood there in the parking lot, surrounded by the ordinary sounds of people loading groceries and starting cars. Life going on while Rachel's fell apart. I'm sorry,
Rachel said. I know it doesn't mean anything now. I know I can't fix what I broke, but I'm sorry, Kat. I'm so sorry. I looked at my sister, this broken, shattered version of the person I'd once loved more than anyone, and I felt not satisfaction, not vindication, not even anger anymore, just sadness. Deep, profound sadness.
Deep, profound sadness for what could have been. I forgive you, I said softly. Rachel's eyes widened. What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because it fixes anything, but because holding on to hatred is destroying me too. And I won't let you take anything else from me. Kat, but I can't have you in my life. I can't trust you. I can't rebuild a relationship with someone who looked me in the eye and stole everything. So I forgive you, but I'm also letting you go. Rachel nodded slowly, fresh tears falling. I understand. She started to walk away, then turned back. The universe, she said with a bitter laugh, the universe took everything from me, every single thing I stole, and it gave it all back to you, didn't it? I didn't answer, because she was right. 3 months after that encounter in the parking lot, I sat in a courtroom watching Rachel be sentenced. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd presided over the fraud trial. The evidence had been overwhelming. Rachel had pleaded guilty as part of a deal to reduce her sentence. Ms. Chen, the judge said, looking down from the bench, you systematically defrauded creditors, employees, and family members. You destroyed a 40-year-old business through greed and mismanagement. You stole from the legacy your parents built. Rachel stood there, head bowed, wearing an ill-fitting suit borrowed from a public defender's office closet. I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You will also be required to make restitution to the victims of your fraud, beginning with the vendors and employees who lost money due to your actions. 4 years. My sister would be in prison for 4 years? As the bailiffs led Rachel away, she looked back at me one last time. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I nodded. Not in forgiveness. I'd already given that. Not in anger. Just acknowledgement. Recognition that this chapter was closing. Then she was gone. 2 months after Rachel's sentencing, I sat in Patricia Wu's office signing papers. The bankruptcy proceedings had been a tangled mess, but the outcome was clear. Rachel's fraud had invalidated significant portions of the estate distribution. The court had ordered the estate reassessed and the inheritance redistributed. I wasn't getting everything. Morrison Maritime Supply was gone, liquidated in bankruptcy proceedings with the assets sold to pay creditors. The business my parents had built no longer existed, but I was getting back half of what the business had been worth, just over $7 million. Additionally, the court had ordered that I receive a portion of the other estate assets that Rachel had claimed, the real estate investments, some of the valuable equipment that had been sold. All told, I was receiving almost $9 million. Not quite what I would have inherited if Rachel had never interfered, but close. Karma,
dear ones, had balanced the scales. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked as I signed the final document. "Tired," I said honestly. "Sad, relieved, all of it. You earned this, Kat. You fought for it." "No," I said slowly. "I didn't fight for it. I just survived and waited for the truth to come out. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do."
With the settlement money, I did something my sister never would have understood. I took $2 million and set it aside for my foster children. Education funds for each of them, trust funds that would be available when they turned 18. I wanted them to have opportunities, choices, a foundation. I used another $1 million to start a nonprofit organization, the Morrison Family Foundation. Its mission? To provide support and resources for foster families, to help people like me who were trying to give vulnerable children stable, loving homes. I bought a bigger house, not a mansion, just a warm, comfortable place with enough bedrooms for each child to have their own space, a yard where they could play, a neighborhood where they could feel safe. I invested the rest wisely, making sure I'd have financial security for the rest of my life. But I didn't need luxury, didn't need status symbols or expensive cars. I needed stability, peace, purpose. And dear ones, for the first time in 2 years, I had all three. 1 year after Rachel's sentencing, I did something unexpected. I went to visit her in prison. I don't know why I felt compelled to go. Part curiosity, maybe, part need for closure, part something I couldn't quite name. The visitation room was gray and cold, separated by thick plexiglass. Rachel appeared on the other side wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking even thinner than before. She picked up the phone on her side. I picked up mine. "Kat," she said, her voice crackling through the connection. "I didn't think you'd ever come." "Neither did I admitted. We sat in silence for a moment, just looking at each other. "How are the kids?" Rachel asked finally. "Good. Jasmine is in middle school now, getting straight A's. Marcus joined the soccer team. Did you know he's amazing at sports?" "And Sophie," I smiled. "Sophie asked about you sometimes. Asks when Auntie Rachel is coming back." Rachel's face crumpled. "I lost them too, didn't I? Not just Madison and Tyler, but your kids, the whole family. You made choices, Rachel." "I know." She wiped at her eyes. "I know. And I live with them every day, every single day." Another silence. "Do you hate me?" Rachel asked quietly. "No," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. "I don't hate you. I'm sad for you. Sad for what you threw away. But I don't hate you." "The karma thing," Rachel said with a hollow laugh. "You were right about that. Everything I took, the universe took back. With interest." "It's not about being right," I said gently. "It's about understanding that actions have consequences, that greed and cruelty don't lead anywhere good, that the universe, well, balances things out eventually. I wish I'd understood that before. Rachel pressed her hand against the plexiglass. I wish I'd been more like you, content, grateful, present. You can still be those things, I said. It's not too late to change, to become someone different, better. Maybe, but she didn't sound convinced. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. Then visiting time was up. As I walked out of the prison into the bright afternoon sunshine, I felt something release in my chest. Some final piece of anger or hurt or resentment that I'd been carrying. Rachel got her karma. The universe balanced the scales, and I survived. More than survived, I built a life I was proud of. Dear ones, let me tell you what I learned from all of this. What the universe taught me through pain and loss and eventual restoration. Karma isn't about revenge. It's not about getting even or watching people suffer. Karma is simply the law of cause and effect playing out in human lives. When you act from greed, when you hurt others for personal gain, when you lie and manipulate and steal, you set forces in motion. Forces that will eventually come back to you. Rachel didn't suffer because I wished it on her. She suffered because she built her life on a foundation of lies and theft, and structures built on lies always collapse. Always. The universe doesn't punish people. People punish themselves by choosing actions that lead inevitably to suffering. My sister wanted more than her share. She wanted my inheritance, my parents' legacy, the success and status and wealth that she thought would make her happy. So she took it. Through manipulation and deceit, she took it all. And for a brief few months, she probably felt victorious, felt smart, felt like she'd won. But then reality caught up. The business she couldn't manage failed. The marriage she had sacrificed family for collapsed. The wealth she had stolen evaporated. The reputation she had cultivated shattered. The freedom she had taken for granted disappeared behind prison walls. Every single thing she took was taken from her. That's karma, dear ones. Not divine punishment, just consequences. Here's what else I learned. Sometimes losing everything is the path to finding what truly matters. When Rachel stole my inheritance, I thought my world had ended. I thought I'd lost my future, my security, my family legacy. But what did I actually lose? Money? A business? Material things? What did I keep? My children, the foster kids who needed me, my integrity, my capacity for love and forgiveness, my ability to find joy in simple things. And in the end, the money came back anyway, not through my efforts, but through karma's patient work. But even if it hadn't, even if Rachel had succeeded completely, if I'd never gotten a penny of my inheritance back, I would have still had everything that mattered. I would have had Sophie's laughter when I pushed her on the swings, Marcus's proud smile when he scored his first soccer goal, Jasmine's tearful hug when I told her I wanted to adopt her permanently. Those moments? Those are the real inheritance, the real wealth. Rachel never understood that. She thought happiness came from having more, from winning, from accumulating wealth and status and security. She died inside from always wanting more, while I came alive by appreciating what I had. That's the cruel irony, dear ones. The person who wanted everything ended up with nothing. The person who was content with enough ended up with abundance.
I want to talk about forgiveness, too, because I know some of you are wondering, how could you forgive her after everything she did? Here's the truth. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. When I was carrying rage and hatred for Rachel, it was poisoning me, making me bitter, making me suspicious of everyone, making me lose faith in humanity. I forgave her not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Forgiving Rachel didn't mean I trusted her again, didn't mean I wanted her back in my life, didn't mean I thought what she did was okay. It just meant I released my right to hatred. I gave up my claim to vengeance. I chose peace over poison. And, dear ones, that choice set me free. Rachel is in prison, serving her sentence. That's justice. That's consequences. That's karma at work. But I'm not in prison. I'm not serving a sentence of rage and bitterness. I'm free. Free to love my children. Free to build my foundation. Free to wake up each morning without the weight of hatred pressing on my chest. Forgiveness was the final gift the universe gave me, the final piece of karma's perfect justice. Rachel lost everything tangible, but I gained something intangible and infinitely more valuable: freedom from the burden of unforgiveness. It's been 3 years now since my father died, since Rachel stole my inheritance, since karma began its patient, perfect work. My life looks nothing like I expected it would. I'm not running the family business. That's gone. I'm not working alongside my sister. She's in prison with 2 more years left on her sentence. But I'm happy, dear ones. Genuinely, deeply happy. Last month, the adoption went through. Jasmine, Marcus, and Sophie are officially, legally, my children, not foster children, my children. The Morrison Family Foundation has helped over 200 foster families in our region. We've provided emergency financial assistance, support services, training, and community building. I've started dating someone, a kind man named David who volunteers at the foundation and doesn't care about my inheritance or my past. He just likes who I am now. I wake up each morning in a house full of laughter. I go to sleep each night knowing I made a difference in someone's life. I've built something real. Not a business empire, but a family, a purpose, a legacy of a different kind. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I think about Rachel, about karma, about how the universe works. I think about how she wanted so much
and ended up with so little. How I was content with enough and ended up with abundance. I think about cosmic justice, about how the scales always balance, even when we can't see how, about how greed plants the seeds of its own destruction, while gratitude waters the garden of contentment. So, dear ones, here's what I want you to take from my story. If someone has wronged you, if they've stolen from you, betrayed you, hurt you, you don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to plot or scheme or get revenge. You just have to survive, to maintain your integrity, to keep being who you are. And trust. Trust that karma is watching. Trust that consequences are coming. Trust that the universe keeps perfect accounts. Your betrayer might seem to be winning now, might seem to be getting away with it, might seem untouchable. But the universe is patient, and karma never forgets. Everything that's been taken from you is being held in trust. And when the time is right, when cosmic justice decides the moment has come, it will all be returned to you, with interest. This is Auntie Whispers, reminding you that the universe is always listening, always watching, always working behind the scenes. And karma? Karma always comes collecting. Always.